Hey everybody, welcome to Cougar Dash. Hopefully everyone had a great holiday season. I know Cody and I certainly did. Cody, we're gonna wrap up the football season here on Cougar Dash and start introducing WSU men's basketball to the show, which has a lot more promise than how the football season ended. What lessons can we learn from this season as a whole? We can start with the final game of the season. I know first and foremost, I want to say, and I'm sure you'd like to say as well, rest in peace to Ty Jordan. Absolutely tragic to hear about that from the true freshman running back. He mauled us when we played, and he certainly had a ton of promise behind him. Really tragic to hear that. But let's talk about this game. What happened, Cody?
Well, you're really kind of bringing up a sore spot here because I have been trying as hard as I can to completely avoid and ignore this game. The USC game the 2 weeks before sucked because they just got destroyed, but this game hurt a lot more because for a while they really had you believing that they had a chance and they were going to win and they were going to end the season, with a good win on a high note, and that just didn't happen. And I think it comes back to something that I have just kind of been saying recently, and I wrote about kind of lessons from this season for Sports Pac-12 is that this is still a rebuild. They started out strong. They beat Oregon State. Their first 6 quarters, if you're including the first half against Oregon, looked really good. And, for a second we thought, all right, maybe this is ahead of schedule. Maybe, they're better than we thought they were going to be, because coming into the season, we didn't really think they were going to be anything special. And then that kind of came crashing down. But, for a while before the USC game, it was like, well, whispers of, well, WSU still has a chance to make the Pac-12 championship. And I think fans kind of got a little ahead of themselves. And then, what happened was what we expected. If you would have told me that these 4 games were the ones they were going to play, 1 and 3 would have probably been the record that I predicted. I mean, I think Stanford and Cal were probably the two next most winnable games other than Oregon State, and they didn't get those. So yeah, they're 1 and 3, but I don't think they're a 25% win percentage team. And I think that's just what happened against Utah. Things came, it just ended poorly. I mean, they didn't get it together in the second half, and it's because this is a young team with a new head coach and a lot of young pieces. So I think that's the main thing is that game did suck, but I don't look at that game and go, this team's a failure, this team sucks. They're inexperienced, they're young, and I think at that point they were mentally and emotionally and maybe physically just beat up from this weird season. So I don't really think this season means much. There's some good points, there's some development, but I think year 2 is when we're really going to see what this team's capable of, because I think Nick Rolovich has done a lot of things that he needed to do besides winning that I think will lead to winning in the future.
It certainly was disappointing on so many different regards for this last game. I mean, in the first half, it looked like we were ending out the season with a bang. It looked like we could really do no wrong. And the third quarter, I want to say we had less than 20 total yards on offense or something throughout the entire third quarter.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah, and we just completely self-destructed in the fourth quarter. So much so that I was almost trying to see what else we could do wrong at that point, especially with the pick six they threw very late in the game on fourth down. It's like, what else could go wrong for this team in the second half? The collapse they had in the second half is something I don't think can be excused. I don't think it's something that should be completely forgotten and say that it's based on inexperience. Yes, it's a true freshman quarterback under center, but we had Borghi back, and Borghi didn't even have that great of a game either. He scored once, I believe, but this was a terrible return on Borghi's part. Granted, he didn't play the first 3 games, and he had a bit of a hiccup with his return in the Cal game, which I'm sure he would have had a better game during that matchup against Cal. But this, I think, to anyone other than Nick Rolovich, is a prime introduction to the Pac-12. Welcome to the Pac-12, Nick Rolovich. This is not, every team is going to come in and compete no matter who you are. No matter if you're Oregon State, who we did not blow out by any means. It was still a competitive game. It was an entertaining game, but you had to play number 11 Oregon. You had to play number 20 something at the time USC, and you had to play Utah, who you may have undersold a little bit. I think they may have undersold their ability a bit, and it cost them in the end. If there's anything, I mean, we gave the team kind of our grade at the end of the season for, everything thrown into the mix of COVID, a shortened season, new coach, new quarterback.
Mhm.
I remember giving him, I think maybe around a C. I'll down it even more to a C minus D plus after this last game, because I don't know how you could really look at this game and see many, moral victories in this defeat to Utah.
I mean, I think really this game was just the epitome of what it is to play football in this season. I mean, if you pull a team off the field a week before, an hour and a half before the game, I think that does things to a team. I think that mentally just breaks them down. I don't even know if this team had 53 players ready to play. I mean, they got on the plane with 53 players. They had a true freshman taking his first snaps ever at safety. I mean, their D line was throwing in guys that hadn't played before. So while it was a terrible game, I mean, I don't think that this is not what this team is at all. I think there's other reasons that came into factor. I'm not excusing it, but I don't think I look at this team and go, I can point to a reason and say that this makes me think any less of this team as what I thought before. I think I have a decent idea of what this team is, from just the season in general. And I think the whole point of this weird season is to look at the positives, because, I can't judge a negative based on this. We don't know who had COVID and who didn't. We don't know who, missed out on 2 weeks of practice and just got back before the game, and who has been around all season. So there's so many aspects that we don't know that I don't really want to judge this, entire year based on a half of football, because the first half looked really good, and I think it showed the potential of what this team can be. So I think we have to, weigh them equal, and we've seen some really good halves and some really good football from this team. But, I think this team is still learning and they're still growing. And, we had to cut out a little hot take segment, but a hot take I have for this team is that I don't think Jaden DeLora currently has a starting quarterback spot right now. I don't think that job is his to lose. That doesn't mean that he won't be it next year, but I think this is a wide open competition again because he didn't do enough to win it. And I think that goes, across the board at a lot of positions. And, the good thing is we get most of this team back. I don't think, other than Abe Lucas, who may go to the draft, I think the team will be the exact same team returning next year. We haven't seen a lot of guys enter the transfer portal. We haven't seen any since the season ended, which I was kind of waiting for because we've seen that a lot of other schools. Once the season was over, guys have started throwing their name in the portal. So this is the exact same team that comes back next year. And so, you get a full year of actual practice with Nick Rolovich and this roster. And so I think that's going to be the big thing is I think, I said the things that Rolovich did is I think he won over the fans with just the way he handled everything and the way, his personality was. He never, made excuses or put blame on anybody else. He was real about, when they struggled and taking blame. And I think he won over the players for that reason. And I think, he showed at times that he could compete and that he belongs in this conference, and I think those are not to be undersold. And I think there's a lot of potential with this team moving forward.
There's certainly a ton of room for improvement for next season, and fingers crossed that we get a full double-digit game season.
Yes,
and
that
maybe
would be
some
nice.
fans can be in the stands as well. And hey, if he wins 2 games next year, that's technically an improvement. So it's a pretty low bar to surpass.
I think we'd be going on win percentage there, and so I'd like to see at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, so we're going to have to bid farewell to football for at least a little bit here, because, a whole other sport in WSU athletics that's been really taking the Pac-12 for a bit of a surprise is men's basketball. Men's basketball had a very promising year last year, finishing 500, which some people may look at a 16-16 record and think, none of it. It's a pretty mediocre year, but considering where this program has been in the past 5 years, post Klay Thompson, it has been exceptionally rough for men's basketball. But this year, I mean, starting off 8-0 against one conference opponent and a couple of, I believe there's some conference favorites in the SWAC and the Mountain West that we faced that, yes, are not Power 5 opponents by any means, but 8 straight wins is 8 straight wins, so 8-0 before this last Saturday against Arizona. I know I have my thoughts on this Arizona game, and you can in fact read specifically my thoughts for a column I wrote for Sports Pac-12 talking about the Arizona game in particular. You can check that out at Sports Pac-12. Cody, tell me what you think about really men's basketball this season, as well as their first L that they took to Arizona last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be a downer for a second, we have seen this before. I think it was 2017, 2018. This team started out undefeated, and it was, well, we're a basketball school now, and that didn't end too well. And I'm not saying this is the same thing, but, you said taking the Pac-12 by storm. They've taken the non-conference opponents by storm. We haven't seen them take the Pac-12 conference by storm, but I don't think that means that they can't. I think this team was really in the same place as the football team that we talked about. Yes, Kyle Smith was in year 2, but when you lose CJ Ellaby, you're kind of starting over. They had some pieces still there, Bonton and Noah Williams, but this was really the year to figure out what this team was and what this team could be for the future. And what they showed was an improvement in a lot of different areas. And I think that's the biggest thing is, we talked a lot at the start of the football season about expectations. And I think the same thing applies here. What are the expectations of this team? The expectations of this team is not to win the Pac-12 tournament. It's not to go, 75% and, win double the games that they lose or whatever, It's to compete. If they go 500 again, that's huge. And I think that's where we have to look at, what's happening. And I think by that, terms, this team so far has been a success, a lot of it's going to come down to how the Pac-12 plays out, because this isn't, a power conference for basketball at the moment. There's not a lot of, top 25 really premier teams. So that leaves the door open for them, to succeed and, maybe be a top half team. I don't know how everything shakes out, but I've been impressed. I think there's been a lot of things that have just been good for the future, not just this year, but, setting the groundworks for what could be, a really solid, like Pac-12 championship contender, in a year, to 3 years.
I would definitely like to say in one aspect, I think this team has taken the conference by storm, and that is on defense. Literally number 1 in the nation in opponent field goal percentage. Every game that WSU has been in, their opponents are not comfortable by any means out there. They are going to have to scrap for buckets the entire game. Not too many opponents have gone against WSU this year and have shot the ball over 40%. And 40% is not really that great of a number to shoot as a team as a whole anyways. So
pretty bad in general.
So with the opponent field goal percentage being in, I believe, in the mid-30s right now, again, number 1 in the nation, and us being a premier rebounding team compared to last year, go figure, we have, 3 or 4 additional centers this year as opposed to 1 last year with Markovetsky. I mean, everybody...
You're forgetting about Jeff.
Jeff was not a center. He was a forward. He was a very undersized forward that was playing center. The 6'8" center who, got it done for what he needed to do. Kyle Smith has said he was not the flashiest of players out there, but he got the job done. He was a great presence in the locker room. Best of luck to him in his overseas career. But we got I don't want to call him premier yet because it's obviously his first year, but we got F.A. Abugidi down
premier
low.
Freshman for sure.
Premier freshman, we'll give him that for sure. I'm not sure if he got freshman of the week this week, but he got it last week. Well deserving of it. He's one of the top shot blockers in the Pac-12, as well as the number 1 leading rebounder in the Pac-12 right now with over 9 boards a game. WSU, last year they had the 3 pillars of Kyle Smith's philosophy, and that is ball handling, rebounding, and defending. If you can establish those, you can win games. You may not have, the Steph Curry or LeBron James on your team to be super flashy on offense. You may not have, that Kevin Durant type scorer some games, but if you can take care of the ball, you can defend, and you can rebound the ball, chances are you're going to win the game. And the philosophy worked last year, right? Like I said, 16-16, 500, and it's working so far this year to a T. Maybe not so much in the ball handling department. It's taken a little bit of the dip, but the defense has taken an absolute leap this year. But I do want to bring up the scoring for WSU because, as much as defense wins championships, scoring puts points on the board, if you know what I mean. So, Bonton had to come in and be the premier scorer for this team this season without LOB. That second spot was kind of thrown up for question at the beginning of the year until Noah Williams took an even bigger second-year leap than I think most of us really predicted.
Yeah.
And now it's up to the third man on that list to be that scoring option. I have some picks for who I think may be the best available option for that third scorer, but who do you see on this team that can be a consistent, support scorer for this team this season?
I think if this team wants to reach its fullest potential and have that third guy step up, I think it has to be Tony Miller. His season has, been marred with injury, and he just came back, so his numbers don't look great. But, he was one of the returning guys that everybody thought this team was going to have to rely on behind Bonton because we didn't know, what else was there. And so I think it has to be him. I think FA has slotted into his role perfectly fine, and they can't rely on him to do more than he's doing, And then I think, you're looking at, you've got some freshmen, you've got Yakimovsky, you've got Rodman, who's a sophomore, and you've got some guys that can do it. But, if this team really wants to get it done, they have to get somebody that they know they can rely on. And I think that's where Tony Miller comes in because he has experience, he can do it and he can be a scoring forward. So, if he's able to slot in and get into double digits, then I think that he really gives the team more scoring than they have been. I think that'll be the key because we haven't seen him get going yet, and we know that he can.
Yeah, Yakimovsky certainly is, aside from Abogidi, is probably one of the most promising freshmen on this team. I mean, the freshman class all around is certainly promising.
Yeah, it's great.
And it even goes as far as with TJ Bamba and Deshaun Jackson have even done their part. Deshaun Jackson had a very solid start against Arizona last weekend and will likely start again tonight against Cal. So, bringing it back to Yakimovsky being that third scoring option, having a 3-shooter at that size with his underrated ball handling, I'd like to add. After the first couple of games this season, I saw he's out onto the court practicing ball handling drills, looking like Steph Curry out there after a game. I mean, it's a 6'8", 3 borderline 4 guy that is doing ball handling drills that I think could be underappreciated on defense. Like, he can definitely surprise some people with his ball handling. But you brought up DJ Rodman as well before he had his sudden injury against Portland State. He was proving to be a 3-and-D player that could really contribute as well. There's so many different options for this third scorer that I think that is underrated on WSU's part. Yes, Bonton will have most of the attention. Noah Williams will have some of the attention. Abogidi will have, quite frankly, a lot of the attention on both ends of the floor.
As he should.
But there's so many different pieces that have had improvements this next season. Even Ryan Brapp has come up, and he had a start for Bonton in his place and had a double-digit scoring performance. And it's very exciting to see this team take the leaps that it's taking right now. And you can be prepared to have more doubters on this team be shocked, to be honest. We took down Oregon last year in kind of an upset, but we also got destroyed by Arizona in both of our matchups last season. And we got destroyed by Stanford in both of our matchups last season. I don't see many blowout losses for a team that holds opponents to mid 30% from the field a game. I do want to notify the chat here for what a start for WSU. Trent Madison, who's actually my roommate. Shout out to the support from the friend group there. But honestly, what a start, because I couldn't have predicted. I mean, yes, we were going against non-conference opponents. I couldn't have predicted that we were going to go 8-0 to this point. I mean, we dodged some bullets, missing the Colorado and Arizona State game, which I think would have been, we would have gotten a taste of some of the premier schools in this conference. But we are not going to finish second to last in the conference like the
No.
Pac-12 had us made out to be.
No, definitely not.
But I will progress here into the final topic for the final couple minutes here. We have to talk about our trip to the Bay Area this week, of course, facing Cal tonight at 7 and Stanford on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Both of them road games, both of them the first road games for WSU this season. What are your initial thoughts for the first road game, the first pair of road games for WSU following an 8-1 start?
Mm-hmm. I mean, really what this comes down to is we're finally going to see, what this team really is, and it's their first, conference test in terms of 2 games back to back. I think Stanford, might be the best team that they've played. That Arizona team is good. But this is when we're going to, the numbers are going to start falling into place of seeing what this team really is, because they're not going to hold opponents to 30% shooting from the field all season. They could do that against Idaho and, all these other,
They did it against Arizona.
They did, but that's not going to keep happening over and over again. So there's going to be games where opponents are going to shoot well, and this team's going to have to keep up on offense, or else they could get blown out. And so, that Stanford game is really what I have my eyes on in seeing what they're going to be able to do, because that could be the game where they need their scoring to step up and win the game. The Cal game doesn't really scare me. Cal has not looked great this year. They haven't won a conference game, losing to Oregon State, who WSU beat when WSU was still in their phase of like playing every game as close as they could and really not trying to win. We forget that. I think the first, 3-4 games they were down at halftime and had to come back. They didn't look like they were trying to win. Then they figured it out and started to put it together, which is some good signs. So that Cal game doesn't scare me. It doesn't mean they can't lose. Cal's got Matt Bradley, who's a good scorer. But that game isn't the one that scares me. It's definitely the Stanford one that scares me, because Oscar Da Silva is really good, and they've got a lot of good players around him. And it's, this is when we have to see WSU step up. This is when we have to see the guys, they've got a lot of complimentary guys, which is good, but, you're going to have to get a good game out of Rodman. You're going to have to get a good game out of Yakumovsky. You're going to have to get a good game out of almost everybody who suits up in order to beat a team like Stanford if they're, firing on all cylinders. So, this is going to be the test. It's also a thing where Noah Williams isn't going to be able to guard their best scorer, which that was one of the reasons why Arizona struggled, because Noah Williams, I don't know every player in Pac-12 basketball, but he is very easily could be the best defensive player, especially for a guard.
Defensive guards, yeah.
Especially for a guard. So when your best opposing scorer is a guard, he can shut him down. He can't do that to Oscar Da Silva. So that's going to be another big test. But, I think we're at a point with not only this conference, but this team where I think they can win any game that they play. So we're going to see how they handle a road game for the first time this year. Obviously, they're not playing in front of fans, but, you still do have to go on the road. But, I think we're going to see today the type of game that they play, and that'll determine what they can do against Stanford, because they have to look good against Cal and then carry that over, against Stanford. So, I am expecting a win. I would probably hedge my bets and say they'll go 1-1, dropping a close game to Stanford, but I wouldn't be surprised if they, leave the Bay Area 2-0.
So against Cal tonight, I want to address the subline we have on here, because it even pains me to type it in and have this segment have the background information that we have listed here. But ESPN has Wazoo versus Cal as an even matchup. Cal may not have their 2 best scorers play tonight, and everyone on WSU, well, not everyone, most people on WSU, which really, if Bonton, Williams, and Abogidi is healthy, there's all your scoring, and there's all really your fire. There's the majority of your firepower right there. WSU is not really that scratched up from the Arizona game. Cal's without their 2 best scorers, and it's an even matchup. I get it's on the road, but Cal's not been a good team. Someone must have a vendetta against WSU with some of these
I don't
lines,
think people that set betting lines watch Pac-12 sports. We've seen this across all the football games and our games, all the games. I don't think they actually pay attention. And not watching Cal and WSU basketball, I can't blame them, because there's like a billion basketball games a day. But I mean, you should have talked to somebody and maybe looked at the records. I don't know.
Yeah, it baffles me this is listed as an even matchup, but I could sit here and give you a 95% confidence level that this is going to be a win tonight, not only for the shorthanded Golden Bears, but really just Kyle Smith and this team is not going to want to lose 2 in a row following a double overtime thriller that they really could have won. Both him and Bonton said in the post-game presser, they could have won that game. And if anything, they really had to nitpick at, it was free throw shooting, which they've struggled with the entire season.
Definitely free throw shooting.
And they went through rigorous free throw rehab, as Coach Smith liked to say it, like to have said it. And free throws, I would like to imagine, is not going to be an issue in this game. Hopefully if it is, then it's something they're just going to have to figure out with experience. But a game against Cal without their 2 best scorers, this whole team is angry after losing to Arizona when they really should have won, if you think about everything they've done. But battling through adversity, like you said, last year's theme was establishing the 3 pillars of Kyle Smith's philosophy. This year, the thing I've heard most is battling through adversity. This team has battled through adversity, as really any school in the country has battled through adversity with the pandemic. But this team has battled through injuries. They've battled through COVID cancellations. They've battled through foul trouble, first half deficits. And they went to an 8-0 start, and they battled through a ton of adversity in a valiant loss to Arizona. Yeah. But they're not going to drop a second game in a row to Cal. But I will say briefly, back to Stanford. Stanford is going to be certainly a test with De Silva. De Silva, his scoring ability at the forward, like you said, Noah Williams is not really going to be matched up against that. That's likely going to be it's likely going to be Yakimovsky's matchup, or it's going to be Abou-Gidi on a switch. And Abou-Gidi, as great as he's played, has had foul trouble, and we've seen it. He had foul trouble with Arizona, as did Deshaun Jackson. You can't game plan against fouls with. It's kind of up to, I guess, the ref's decision to call a foul or not. But they're going to have to defend smart. They've defended tremendously the entire season. I expect a good game in both of these matchups. I'll agree with 1-1 for a safe prediction, but it's going to be a tough, scrappy game against Stanford this Saturday for sure. But that is all the time that we have for Cougar Dash here. Got to talk a little bit about men's basketball, and you can expect that for really the majority of this semester, unless some burning news comes out about football. But you can find our written content exclusively on Sports Pac-12, and you can follow them on Twitter at Sports Pac-12. You can find their links to that written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at DashSportsTV. And lastly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch us at the same time next week, 1 o'clock on Thursdays. Now we have a little time change here, but 1 o'clock Thursdays, Cougar Dash. You can tune in every week. As always, go Cougs.